When my grandfather passed away, he left me $75,000. Not because I was his favorite, but because I was the only one who cared for him, while everyone else, including my parents, stayed away. I thought it was a gift of love, but the moment the check cleared, my parents showed up with open hands demanding I hand it over to fund their retirement. When I refused, they disowned me. But instead of breaking down, I made a choice. One that not only honored my grandfather's legacy, but taught my parents a lesson they'd never forget. My name is Lena, and I've always known I was the afterthought in my family. Growing up, I was never the priority, not to my parents anyway. My older brother, Jake, was the golden child, the football star, with good looks and charm. I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the girl who disappeared into the background because that's where I was always pushed. My parents, Karen and Bill, weren't bad people on paper. They worked hard, paid bills, showed up to school functions when it was convenient. But they never really saw me. I don't remember them asking how my day was or noticing when I cried myself to sleep at night. Their attention was always elsewhere, on themselves, their problems, their retirement dreams. The only person who ever made me feel truly seen was my grandfather, Walter, my dad's dad. He was old school in the best way. A quiet man who believed in hard work, loyalty, and looking someone in the eye when you spoke to them. When I was around 10, he moved in with us after his first stroke. Everyone else saw it as a burden. I saw it as a chance to finally have a real connection with someone. While my parents complained about the extra mouth to feed, I spent my afternoons helping Grandpa Walter with his physical therapy reading to him and listening to his stories about life during the war, or how he built his business from nothing. He had this old leather notebook filled with personal lessons quotes and advice he hoped to pass down. He started reading them to me one by one. I soaked it all in. When I turned 16, my parents started spending more time out of the house, weekend getaways, dinner parties, self-care nights. That left me as the default caregiver. I didn't mind. In fact, I cherished it. I cooked for Grandpa, gave him his meds, even learned how to check his blood pressure and glucose levels. He used to say, "Lena, you've got an old soul and a big heart. Don't ever let this world turn you cold." As the years passed and Grandpa's health declined, the rest of the family grew more distant. My brother moved out of state. My parents got busier. The responsibility of his care became fully mine by the time I was in college. I balanced classes during the day and came home to care for him at night. I sacrificed social life, sleep, and sometimes even food. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because he deserved dignity, not neglect. He passed away peacefully in his sleep when I was 24. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. It was the single most heartbreaking moment of my life. And yet, there was also a sense of peace. I knew he wasn't in pain anymore. A week after the funeral, I was contacted by his lawyer. Grandpa had left behind a will. To my complete surprise, he had left me $75,000. It wasn't an inheritance out of guilt or obligation. It was intentional. In his handwritten letter to me, he said, "This money is not a reward. It is a seed. Use it to grow something meaningful, something rooted in care like the care you gave me. Let the world see the kind of woman you are." My parents didn't attend the will reading. They hadn't been to see Grandpa in months before he died. In fact, they seemed almost annoyed when I mentioned his passing. He lived a good long life, Mom said flatly, flipping through a magazine. Now, we can finally turn that guest room into a home gym. I didn't tell them about the inheritance. At first, for a few weeks, I kept the check hidden in a drawer, unsure of what to do. I considered investing it, maybe going back to grad school, maybe putting it toward a house. But mostly, I just thought about Grandpa and how I could live up to the trust he put in me. But of course, secrets like that don't stay secrets for long in families like mine. My mom found the lawyer's business card in my purse. She Googled the name, found out he specialized in estate transfers, and immediately confronted me. "Did your grandfather leave you money?" she asked, arms crossed, eyes sharp. I paused. "Yes, he did. How much? That's private." Her nostrils flared. "Lena, we are your parents. We deserve to know." That was the beginning of the end. Within hours, my dad chimed in, equally indignant. "If he left you money, it's because of us. Without us, you wouldn't even exist to inherit anything." I stared at them, stunned. There was no curiosity, no warmth, no gratitude for the years I spent sacrificing for Grandpa, just entitlement. They weren't happy for me. They were angry that I had something they didn't. My mom tried guilt. "We've worked our whole lives, Lena. We're not getting any younger. That money could help fund our retirement. You don't want your parents to struggle, do you?" My dad went a step further. "If you keep that money for yourself, you're choosing to be selfish. And if that's the case, don't expect us to be in your life anymore." I remember sitting there frozen. For years, I had longed for their approval, their attention, their love. And here they were, putting a price tag on it. I realized something in that moment. My love for them had always been unconditional. Theirs had terms and fine print. So I made my decision. After that explosive confrontation, I tried to take some space. I needed time to think, to breathe, to process what just happened. But my parents didn't give me that chance. Within a day, they started calling non-stop. At first, it was my mom, her tone syrupy and manipulative. "Sweetheart," she said, "I think you're just overwhelmed. Let's all sit down, have dinner, and talk about this like adults. We're a family." Families share, right? I didn't respond. Then came the text messages from both of them. At first they were polite. "Mom, we just want what's fair. You wouldn't have been in Grandpa's life if we hadn't raised you." "Dad, you're acting like a spoiled brat. Don't let a little money ruin our relationship." And then when I continued to stay silent, the tone shifted. The messages turned passive-aggressive, then just aggressive. "Mom, you clearly don't value us at all. Maybe we should have given all that time and energy to Jake instead. Dad, if you walk away from us over this, you'll regret it." I tried reasoning with them. I called one night and said, "Can we just talk without yelling?" I explained that the money wasn't a lottery win. It was a gift of trust from Grandpa. It was meant to honor the bond. We had not create conflict. But my mom cut me off. "You think we don't deserve anything. After everything we did for you, we fed you clothed. You put a roof over your head. And this is how you repay us." I was stunned. They were treating basic parenting things they were supposed to do as some kind of lifelong debt I owed them interest on. My dad jumped in. "Do you know how much we've sacrificed? Your mom put off her dreams for this family. I worked extra shifts for years. And now you've got this cash, and suddenly you're too good for us." "It's not about being too good," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about boundaries. Grandpa wanted me to have this for a reason. That's when my mom dropped the mask entirely. You're a selfish little girl. You always have been. Ungrateful, cold, just like your grandfather in his final years, bitter and manipulative. I felt my chest tighten. She knew how much Grandpa meant to me, and she used that to twist the knife. The next morning, I woke up to a long email. My parents had written a list of all the things they expected me to contribute to their future. Now that I was financially secure, it included helping pay off their credit card debt, contributing to their retirement travel plans, and even helping Jake with his mortgage. Yes, Jake, the brother who hadn't even attended Grandpa's funeral. I sat at my desk and cried. Not because I didn't want to help my family. I did, but because I realized they didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as an ATM, a convenient solution to their poor planning and lack of emotional investment over the years. I tried one more time. I invited them to meet for lunch, hoping to find some middle ground. They showed up 30 minutes late. No apologies, just fake smiles. Over plates of lukewarm pasta, I tried again. I don't want this to be a wedge between us. But I need you both to understand. This money isn't just cash to throw around. It's symbolic. It came with a message, my dad scoffed. Don't act like it's sacred. It's just money. You think we don't deserve a piece? My mom nodded. What kind of daughter chooses a dead man's wishes over her living parents? I clenched my jaw. He's not just a dead man. He's the only one who showed me unconditional love. You didn't even visit him when he got sick. That's not fair, my mom snapped. We were busy. Life gets in the way. No, I said, voice shaking. You chose not to be there. Just like you're choosing now to see me as a bank instead of a person. They both stood up, causing nearby diners to look over. You want to go through life without your family, my dad said, throwing his napkin on the table. Fine. Don't come crawling back when you need something. They left me sitting there alone. After that, it was radio silence. No more calls, no texts, no invites. Not even a generic happy birthday or Merry Christmas message. I had been cut off, and I'll be honest, it hurt. Even after everything they said and did, they were still my parents. Part of me hoped they'd come around, apologize, maybe even try to rebuild something healthier. But they didn't. What hurt more wasn't the silence itself. It was the realization that I had always been alone, that their love had conditions, that my worth to them was transactional. Holidays came and went. I spent Thanksgiving with a friend's family and Christmas volunteering at a senior center. Each event reminded me of what I never had, and yet oddly, I began to feel lighter. Without the weight of their judgment, I started to rediscover who I was. I started thinking not about what I'd lost, but about what I could create. Something meaningful, something real. And that's when the idea came to me. A center, not just a charity. A place where elderly people, especially those forgotten or discarded by their own families, could learn skills, make connections, and earn a sense of dignity. A place Grandpa would have been proud of. Once I had the idea, I couldn't sleep. I stayed up late, scribbling notes in a journal. Names, concepts, locations, services. It wasn't just about giving back. It was about building something my grandfather would be proud of. Something I could be proud of. The vision was simple, a vocational center for older adults, particularly seniors who felt discarded or helpless in retirement. It would offer free courses, computer skills, light bookkeeping, resume writing, even basic trades. But more than that, it would be a place for connection, for confidence, for purpose. I called it the Second Wind Project. My initial funding came entirely from Grandpa's $75,000 inheritance. I didn't touch a penny for personal use. Every cent went into permits, leasing a modest space in a strip mall, purchasing equipment, and hiring 2 part-time instructors. The first class was small, just 5 students. But each one came in with the same wide-eyed expression of hope and fear. They were nervous, unsure, self-doubting. But within 2 weeks, something shifted. One woman, Evelyn, 67, hadn't worked in over 30 years. Her husband passed, and her grown children lived out of state. She came in wanting to just feel useful again. We taught her how to create an email address, update a resume, and apply for part-time admin jobs. She cried the day she got her first interview. Then there was Ron, a 70-year-old retired mechanic. He began volunteering to teach basic auto maintenance to the other students. Suddenly, he had purpose again. I watched lives change. I watched my life change. And yet, in the back of my mind, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I didn't hear from my parents, and I wasn't sure whether that was a blessing or a wound. Until one Monday morning, I opened my inbox and froze. There it was, an application form submitted through our website's Interested Participants page. 2 names. My parents. Sandra and Michael Kramer. They had applied to take part in the new Encore Careers track. We had just launched an accelerated program for older adults seeking immediate work in the customer service and digital literacy fields. I felt my breath catch. The woman who called me selfish. The man who told me I'd regret not sharing Grandpa's money. They wanted help now, from me, from the program they mocked. I didn't reply immediately. I called my board, a small team of advisors who'd helped me launch the nonprofit. They knew the story. They'd seen the scars. I told them the truth my parents had applied as if nothing had ever happened. One of the advisors, a retired social worker named Alan, asked me, "How do you want to handle this?" "You're the founder. You set the tone." I didn't answer right away. I had to think. Because part of me wanted to be petty. Part of me wanted them to grovel. But another part wondered, is this my chance to rebuild something? I finally wrote back. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Kramer, thank you for your interest in the Second Wind Project. At this time, we are carefully reviewing all applications. Due to high demand and limited resources, not every applicant can be accepted into the upcoming session. We will notify you of our decision within 2 weeks. Best regards, Lena Kramer, founder and executive director. 2 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up. It was my mother. "Lena," she said, her voice tight. "We saw your email. We need this. You know your father hasn't been able to find work since the layoffs. I'm doing part-time daycare, but it's not enough. You built this. You can make room for us." She didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge the past. She just asked. I swallowed hard. "Why now?" A pause. "We didn't think it'd be this hard," she said finally. "Retirement isn't what they told us it'd be. And we saw the article in the paper about your center. I didn't know you were doing something so good." That hit me sideways. "You mean you didn't think I could do something good?" I asked quietly. Another pause. That's not what I said. But it was. And she knew it. After we hung up, I went to the center and walked down the halls. The posters on the wall showed smiling seniors in computer labs, job fairs, and volunteer programs. And yet behind every smile, I knew there were stories of abandonment, of family who didn't call, of children who stopped visiting. I thought of my own parents, of how they ghosted me for over a year, of birthdays missed, holidays spent in silence, of that awful email with a list of financial demands, as if love were an invoice. The decision weighed heavy, but deep down, I knew what I had to do. I sat down to write the rejection. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Kramer, after reviewing your application and considering our program's goals and mission, we regret to inform you that your request to join the Second Wind Project has been declined. Our mission is to serve those who have faced aging alone, those who have been discarded, neglected, or undervalued by the people in their lives. We focus on seniors who've never had a safety net, who weren't given the dignity they deserved. We exist to restore that dignity, not to reward those who once took it from others. I wish you well, but this center is not for you. Lena Kramer, Founder and Executive Director. I sent it. I stared at the screen afterward, numb. I expected a response, anger, insults, guilt trips, but instead, I got nothing. Silence. A week passed, then two. And then out of nowhere, my brother Jake called. He hadn't spoken to me in over 2 years since the will reading. You rejected Mom and Dad, he said, without greeting. Cold. I sighed. They rejected me first. He scoffed. Whatever. You could have helped. You're just like Grandpa bitter till the end. I didn't argue. I let him hang up, and I didn't feel a flicker of regret, because in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't the villain in their story. I was just the one who stopped playing the role of a doormat. The story didn't end there, though. Word spread. Our center got more press, especially after we helped place 3 students in local jobs. A reporter from a major paper interviewed me. She asked about my inspiration. I told her the truth about Grandpa, about being raised to believe love was transactional, and about finally breaking the cycle. The article went viral. People wrote in from all over the country. Donations poured in. Other cities asked if I could help them start similar centers. It was overwhelming but beautiful. And then one morning I found something at the front desk. A handwritten letter. No return address. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was from my dad, Lena. I read the article. You've built something real, and I see now that I didn't. I'm not writing for forgiveness, just to say you were right. I let money, pride, and fear get in the way. I don't expect to be part of your life again, but I hope someday you'll know that I'm proud of you. Dad. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it and placed it in the drawer next to Grandpa's old pocket watch. Maybe that was the closure I needed. Or maybe it was just the beginning of a new chapter 1, where I no longer chased the love I never truly had, and instead built love where others had none. 3 months after my dad's letter, things had settled into a new rhythm. We'd launched a second track at the Second Wind Project, focused on entrepreneurship for seniors. I brought in guest mentors, retired business owners, and even a few local college students to help teach basic digital marketing. The waiting list had grown 3-fold. I didn't think about my parents much anymore. I thought about impact and healing, about what legacy meant when you stopped defining it through your last name and started building it through your actions. But then came the email that caught me off guard. It was from an administrative volunteer at the front desk. A forwarded registration form from the same couple as before. My parents. But this time, they used different names, Sandra and Mike Carter. I stared at it stunned. Same birth dates, same phone number, same home address. They had tried to reapply under aliases, as if I wouldn't notice, as if I wouldn't care. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part felt an old, aching fury bubble up. They had learned nothing. No remorse. Just desperation, wearing a cheap disguise. But something in me had changed too. Instead of confronting them, I decided to teach them a final, undeniable lesson. I approved the application. For the next 2 weeks, I let them attend classes like any other participant. They came in through the side door, wore cheap sunglasses, and avoided eye contact with staff. My instructors didn't recognize them and simply called them Mike and Sandra. They were polite, quiet, compliant. They had no idea I watched every class through the center's internal monitors, not with spite, but with intent. They weren't here to sabotage. They weren't trying to manipulate anyone, at least not overtly. They were just tired, lost, hollowed out, and still unwilling to admit who they were or what they'd done. That's when I planned our Alumni Recognition Day. It was something I'd wanted to do anyway, a celebration of participants who had completed the core training and made progress toward employment. We sent out invites, got a small press team, arranged a cake and catering, and asked all current participants to attend. And then I wrote the speech. The day came. The room was full, about 70 attendees, including graduates, family members, local media, and the mayor's community liaison. I stood at the podium as cameras clicked, and warm chatter filled the room. I spotted them, my parents sitting in the back corner, trying to blend in. My father had shaved his beard, and my mother wore a scarf, but it was them. I could see the flicker of recognition in their eyes when I took the stage. I began to speak. I want to thank all of you for being part of the Second Wind Project, for trusting us, for showing up for yourselves, for choosing to believe in second chances even when the world seemed to give up on you. Applause. And today, we're especially honoring those who've completed our program, those who've proven that growth doesn't expire with age and dignity isn't dependent on dollars. I paused. Let the silence settle. I also want to take a moment to talk about why this center exists, I continued, because it's not just about jobs, it's about justice and healing. The room was quiet. I started this project after losing someone I loved, my grandfather. He left me an inheritance, not just money, but memories, kindness, the sense that I mattered. And what did I do with that gift? I used it to help people who had been made to feel like they didn't. I scanned the room. My gaze fell on the back row. In our society, too many seniors are cast aside, and sometimes they're not abandoned by the system, but by their own families, the people who were supposed to love them. My mother shifted uncomfortably. My father stared at the floor. I leaned into the microphone. But this center isn't for everyone, I said softly. It's not for those who discarded their children when they didn't get their way. It's not for those who demanded money instead of giving love. It's not for people who only remember your name when they need something. A hush swept the crowd. And then I said it. This center is for the lonely, for the overlooked, for the worthy, but not for those who tried to steal someone's future and now want to hide from their past under a fake name. Gasps. All eyes turn toward the back of the room. I look directly at them, my voice steady, calm. Mike and Sandra Carter. Or should I say Michael and Sandra Kramer? You are no longer welcome here. My staff turned. Security moved in gently, but firmly escorting them toward the exit. My mother whispered something I couldn't hear. My father kept his eyes on me, wounded, but he didn't fight. They walked out in silence past every person they thought they could fool. And when the door closed behind them, I turned back to the audience. This place is sacred, I said, not because of me, but because of you. You've all survived something, and here we honor survival with truth, not lies. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was quiet, respectful, emotional, but it was the loudest sound I had ever heard in my soul. After that day, something inside me settled, not because I'd humiliated them. That was never the goal, but because I had finally drawn a boundary and held it. For years, I thought forgiveness meant staying open, letting people hurt you again and again as long as they shared your blood. But I learned that real healing often starts with saying no, loudly, publicly, and without apology. The media coverage from the event exploded, not because of the drama, but because of the mission. Outlets framed it as a powerful example of how one woman turned grief and betrayal into a community of hope. Donations tripled. Volunteers poured in. We expanded to 3 more cities in under a year. One morning, I received a handwritten note. It was from a woman named Agnes, one of our earliest members. She wrote, "You didn't just teach me how to work again. You reminded me I'm still worth something, that I'm not disposable, that I matter." I cried reading it, harder than I'd cried in years, because in that moment, I knew I'd done right by my grandfather. He didn't leave me money so I could buy comfort. He left it so I could create change. And as for my parents, I haven't heard from them since. Maybe they're angry. Maybe they're ashamed. Maybe one day they'll realize the real inheritance they missed out on wasn't the money, but the daughter they chose to betray. Until then, I'll keep showing up for the people who do want to grow, for the forgotten, for the brave, for those building new chapters when the world thinks their story is over. Because legacy isn't what you get, it's what you give. And I'm just getting started.